Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Members of HOAs, what's the most ridiculous rule you have to follow? There's an interesting thing about HOAs that few people realize. They're controlled by the homeowners. Problem is, relatively few homeowners ever show up for those meetings. They've got little league practice, or they're still working, or they just plain forgot when they're being held. That means if you're motivated enough, it's relatively easy to take over an HOA. 1. Go door to door throughout the neighborhood in respectable clothes. Explain that some of the HOA's rules are ridiculous and you'd like to get them changed. Request that the homeowners assign you their votes as a proxy for a given period of time. This will allow you to implement some common sense changes. 2. Review the rules of your HOA. Know those rules. They're going to be used against you and you need to know how to use them yourself. 3. Once you've gotten enough of these proxies, attend the next meeting. Bring several witnesses. Be prepared for the HOA leadership to involve rent-a-cops and/or local police. Pick your own methods for dealing with those issues if they arise. 4. Using your mass of proxies, propose, second, and approve the changes you need. 5. Create a new rule for your HOA that forbids changes to the existing proxy system or this new rule without a 51% majority of all voting members, not all voting members present, which is usually how things are done. Problem is, now you have to get up off your butt and convince most of your neighbors to give you a signature. Not even show up, just sign here to stop the stupid. Holy S. I am pretty sure this is the exact mechanism Hitler used to rise to power in Germany. I love it. Hitler ran a great HOA with a really easy to follow rule list. Rule 1, no Jews. Rule 2, no Jews. My parents' house is in an HOA neighborhood and they have such fun rules as no parking on the street between midnight and 7 a.m. as it can lower the property value. Grass can be no longer than 4 inches regardless of if it is visible from public property. AC units must be fenced in and no visible from the street or any other house. All damage from hurricanes, this is in Florida, must be repaired within 1 week. Each of these have associated fines from $35 to $200, though many of them are suggested donations and unenforceable. The neighborhood only gets 2 garage sales per year, April and September, and there is a dress code for certain neighborhood activities. So that means if there is any garage sale, birthday party at the park, swimming pool guests, etc., the residents and guests have to adhere to certain attire guidelines. For garage sales, we have to wear striped orange polos and khaki, $30 fine. You cannot share towels at the swimming pool even if they are family. Everyone must bring their own, $25 fine. Must remove any holiday decorations after 3 days it's holiday, $50 fine. Cannot use a different colored light bulb unless instructed by the HOA. That means I can't use a 5000K daylight color bulb, $25 fine. I had verbal permission to have my dog from my HOA president. A year later, they got peed at me. Think 60-year-old HOA members and 22-year-old new homeowner. Now all of a sudden, I need to submit a written request to identify and formally request my mobile household pet be allowed, of which it's likely that it will be disapproved. I respectfully sent back a memorandum identifying my dog, that they all know pretty well, as a member of the Canis Major family belonging to the breed Dachshund and having the markings of a standard short-haired red Dachshund. I told them that I was not going to submit a formal request to keep him after he had been residing there for well over a year with no complaints, and then counter-demanded the HOA deal with some issues before I dealt with this, fully knowing that they couldn't handle those. I even signed the memorandum with a dog paw. Eventually, this went on with about 3 more similar memorandums before they gave up. I even bought a cat and another dog. F them. Later, I was elected the vice president due to people realizing that I wasn't taking S from anyone and things would start to improve. I let the power get to my head and let my mobile household pet S wherever he wanted. Seriously, F HOAs. Avoid them if you can. Oh man, I posted this before, kinda long. But disclosure fees. Basically, when you sell your house or condo, you have to get a disclosure or condo certification sent to the title company and bank, and then the CC and RS sent to the new owner. Thing is, they take about 10 minutes to do, but many companies are now charging fees between $200 and $1,000 up front. My cousin worked for a large community management firm where he processed disclosures for home sales for HOAs for about 75 communities. He said when the market crashed, the company executives were ecstatic because of how many he had to process, and they ended up raising the fees and then making it an upfront fee, which was the first company in their region to do it and caused a huge fuss because it was needed to complete sales. Basically, my cousin had to field hundreds of calls a week of being threatened and screamed at by banks, realtors, and homeowners, lawyers coming to the office, calls from Attorney General's office, and much more because of it. A lot of them also were people that were trying to avoid foreclosure but really couldn't spare the extra almost $400 for the disclosure. The execs didn't care though, because their bottom line was padded with hundreds of thousands of dollars in admin fees. His anxiety went through the roof dealing with it day in and day out since it was only him, and he finally quit after a couple years of it. Crazy smart guy, really good with people and finance, but he rarely even will answer his phone because of that job, and even switched careers so he doesn't have to mess with people's money. He's making decent money with what he's doing now, but after seeing all of that, it's actually scared him away from buying a house in this state and still has anxiety issues. I got out of college and the first paying job I could find was in private security. I was working at a gated HOA community that is effing badass insane. The security guard who is permanently stationed there has a sick enjoyment by showing them how stupid their rules are by enforcing them strictly. Things like you have to have a visitor's pass to park, a parking pass can be denied to you if the homeowner illegally leased the house to you, you do not plant or maintain your own yard, it is all contracted and not an option. There is an old parking pass that, while once legitimate, will still get your car towed. Her favorite one was when they passed the rule, no delivery trucks after 5 p.m. On Valentine's Day, nobody got their flowers and the HOA changed the rule immediately. Can't be mad at her, she didn't write the stupid effing rules. I wouldn't live there. I'm not allowed to maintain/mow my front yard. It is about 8 feet by 30 feet. In Oregon, the ground can be very moist and a terrible, truly incompetent lawn maintenance company is required by HOA to maintain the yard. They also run my front watering system, which they do terribly. My front yard looks like monster trucks had S every week and didn't do me the favor of even trying to cover up the refuse. I've lodged complaints since the day I moved in, and the best I've got was a couple additional notices that I own too many vehicles. I guess 3 in my driveway is excessive. I asked if I could maintain my own yard, even if I continued to pay for the service, and received an adamant no. There's a guy at the HOA where I live who complained about the sprouting pine trees by the group mailboxes, and that there are sometimes skunks around. A few things to consider. 1. Heat makes pine cones drop. 2. Rain makes them release seeds and grow. 3. This was the wettest, hottest year on record. 4. We live in the largest ponderosa pine forest on the continent. 5. In case you missed it, in number 4, we live in an effing forest. This is not an exaggerated way of saying there are planted trees about. You drive a mile from downtown and you're in the woods. I took a wrong turn coming back from Target and ended up on a U.S. Forest Service dirt road. The tree 3 feet from where I park my car is like 90 years old. 6. There are going to be plants and animals around, a-hole. You knew that when you moved into an effing forest. Sitting in a building surrounded by trees and complaining about the existence of trees is absurd. I'm a renter in a condo community, pretty much an HOA on steroids because we all share the same building. Lots of ridiculous restrictions, but most notably, I detest the rule that renters in the building have to pay $40 extra per month for a parking spot. They say it's because we aren't the ones paying the community fees each month, although the owners of the unit that is being rented still pay the community fees, which is another rule. Renters cannot pay the association fees, only the owner of the unit can pay it and cannot charge the renter for it. So, unnecessary and stupid. Pick. Can't run a business out of your unit, one of the secondary reasons we no longer live there. If you want flooring other than carpet in the areas other than the entryway, kitchen, or bathroom, you need special permission. No washers or dryers in the units. Only owner-occupants can have dogs, and they can only have one dog. No restriction on cats. If you read the rules strictly, guinea pigs, hamsters, and gerbils are prohibited because they aren't on the permitted pet list and are therefore exotic. They've also interpreted their rules and regs and their covenants in some rather ridiculous ways. That's the primary reason we don't live there anymore. There are 7 people on the board. All but one member of the board has been serving on the board for more than 10 years. 5 of them have been serving for more than 30. A special bunch. Once upon a time, I needed to sell my townhouse, but the buyer's inspection said I needed an external vent through the soffit for the bathroom fan to bring the house up to code. But the HOA said we couldn't modify the exterior of the units. Their rule literally meant that we couldn't be code compliant. HOA was still run by the builders who had built my unit 20 months prior and were still finishing some units in the complex. The unit was compliant when built, but codes had changed that year. They were building the new units up to code, but through the HOA, were trying to make it difficult for current owners to sell because the builders wanted to sell their new uninhabited units instead. The only possibly ridiculous one in mine is fence changes have to go to a committee for approval. It makes sense for new fences to keep out eyesores, but they worded it poorly. Technically, it includes any changes or replacement, so replacing my worn-out fence with an identical one took 6 months of waiting for committee approval. It was fun though when they tried to start fining me after 6 months of violation. I emailed the relevant bylaw text, a copy of my committee request 6 months earlier, and lack of response. I got a wonderfully nice letter approving my request and thanking me twice for judiciously following the rules. In my parents' HOA, there is absolutely no cutting of trees at any time, even if they're dead. We had an ice storm once, and a dead tree that couldn't be cut down as per regulations from my neighbor's yard fell into his back deck and through his sliding glass door into his kitchen. Even after the tree was in his house, he was still not allowed to cut it up at that point, and he received a fine when he did so to get it out of his house. From the neighborhood I grew up in, you couldn't have an air conditioner that hung outside of your window. Not a big deal, right? Yeah, well, the guy who came up with the rule had a swamp cooler hanging out of his window. My wife's mom and stepdad live in an HOA neighborhood. Their house is lakefront property, so the residents that did not have lakefront property would constantly use their yard as an access point to the lake. This includes blocking the driveway with vehicles and parking in the driveway. Then, of course, with any high volume of foot traffic consisting of teenagers, there would be your occasional instances of vandalism, breaking into their cars, etc. Her stepdad decided the only way to stop all of these issues would be to stop the foot traffic. In order to do this, he needed to get permission by the HOA to extend the fence to his neighbor's fence to close off the path to the lake. The HOA fought tooth and nail. We found out that a board member's family used that access point. They pushed so hard that they convinced the neighbor not to allow the stepdad to hook up his fence to theirs. The final straw was when the board president outright denied their fence addition, which they had no justification to do. Luckily, one of the board members, a lawyer, was actually getting tired of the politics involved in this fight. He informed the president that there was no legal right to deny the addition, and if he continued to attempt to do so, he would represent the stepdad pro bono in a civil action. He then mentioned the insurance liability implications if someone was to get injured on the stepdad's property. The HOA could be sued instead of the stepdad because he made a reasonable attempt to stop the foot traffic and subsequent injury. So, TLDR, fence got put up, foot traffic stopped, but now a bunch of people hate the stepdad for eliminating easy access. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.